Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Scale Up Live Series 3. We've got the wonderful Liana Fricker with us today. Hello, Liana, how are you doing?
I am very well. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure. It's really excited to have you on today and to chat about this topic with you. So, this third series is all about the overcoming the sort of growth slump that is just so common, I suppose, for most scaling businesses. Those kind of periods of really gritty growth where you start out, you've got that early excitement around what you're doing. The early adopters are coming on board, and you're kind of going faster than you can probably keep up with initially. But then suddenly things start to slow. Starts to feel a little scary sometimes when those numbers start to dip when you've been so excited about such monthly growth every time. And so we just thought it was a really good topic to kind of get a few different perspectives on, because there's so many ways to come at this challenge and so many kind of different things to think about, both in terms of your mindset and how you approach it, but also just practically what do you do and what do you focus on. And so really excited to get your perspective on that topic today. So before we get into it, though, do you want to just give a quick introduction to yourself and Inspiration Space for our listeners?
Yeah, so as I said, I'm Liana, and I'm a venture catalyst and inspirer in chief. And what that really means is I help people to start businesses and grow beyond what they think is possible. I've always been big into ideas and creating. My background is in marketing and grassroots community building. And I'm real passionate about using those gifts to make an impact. And for me, supporting, entrepreneurship is the best way that I can do it, because I do genuinely
Yeah.
believe that business is the greatest vehicle that we as individuals have to create the world that we want to see. So, Inspiration Space was started originally as an alternative to traditional networking groups. And then over the past kind of 4.5 years, it's evolved. And now it is a center for innovation and creativity. And we support early stage founders and what we like to call companies of one through our programs and our mentorship and the community, which provides this kind of everlasting support.
Yeah. Which I imagine actually in this particular kind of scenario that we're talking about, these kind of gritty growth periods, that's actually really valuable, right? Having a community of other founders you can turn to and be like, how did you do this?
For sure. I think especially because we work in a space and with people who more often than not don't identify as entrepreneurs. And that's the other thing that really motivates me, is this idea that we need to change the story. We need to tell a new narrative about what entrepreneurship is and who is an entrepreneur. Because so long as when you ask someone, give me an example of an entrepreneur, and everyone says Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg, we're really missing so much value and so much talent that we need to, inspire and support and lift up and, connect them with the same kind of tools and business building principles so that they can bring their visions to life. That is the exception, that version of entrepreneurship that we see, as opposed to the rule. And having a community of people who are just like you and they are ambitious and they're trying to build big things, really, I've seen it firsthand. It helps people to step into this new version of themselves and make scary decisions, take risks that they otherwise wouldn't take.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I suppose, speaking to both your own experience as a founder and growing your own business, and also probably from, building this community of entrepreneurs, is this something you see happening quite often then, and have experienced yourself in terms of this kind of growth slowness you've experienced? And why do you think that? Why does it happen?
I mean, business is really organic. It's very organic. Something that I struggled with in the early days was we found success very early.
Mm.
Um, we had 100 members within the first 3 months. I'd done something like 80 in-person events on my own. I was
Wow.
bootstrapping. I didn't have a team. I didn't have, I had people who believed in me.
Yeah.
Um, and, they helped me to figure it out.
Mm.
And what I've learned is that building a business is a very organic process. And sometimes when you think nothing is happening, everything is happening. An analogy
Mm.
that I use is when my son was about 5 or 6, um, they planted sunflowers at school. And he came home with the cup and the dirt. And the next morning he woke up and he was like, "Where is it?" I was like, "What do you mean, where is it?" He's like, "Where's my sunflower?" And I was like, "Oh, no, 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 that's not how it works. That's not how it
Yeah.
works." And I think sometimes we think that that's how businesses are supposed to grow. Like,
Mm.
like Jack and the Beanstalk, you plant it one night and then all of a sudden everything's, amazing. It's like, well, that's not how it works. And more often than not, it's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, fall on the
Yeah.
floor, clap your hands 5 times, wake up, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my gosh, green shoots." And and
Yeah.
and that is the process. That is the process. Nothing worth having happens
Mm.
overnight. Even those
Yeah.
stories, of the outsized success, those take years. And I'm generally skeptical of, an overnight success. It's like a factory farm
Yeah.
chicken. Like, what did you give up? How strong are the bones of this thing for it
Yeah.
to have grown that fast? That's not
Yeah.
sustainable. And so I think with these growth slumps, it's not even, I don't even know if it's a slump. It's just, it's not always going to be exciting. It's not always going to be this
Yeah.
upward trajectory. And from a sustainability perspective, both environmental and, your own mental wellness and health, this
Yeah.
idea of just like it keeps going up, 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 up is completely and totally unrealistic. And we need to move
Yeah.
away from that as an idea in business, full stop, I believe.
Yeah. No, I think yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think it's such an unrealistic expectation to set. And that completely agree that it's this kind of constant shifting backwards and forwards and kind of inching your way forwards, but knowing that those knockbacks are just a reality of running a business because, you know, new competitors can crop up that might kind of get in your way temporarily. You've got to slightly reshift. Seasonality, things like that can even play a role. There's so many factors that are technically kind of out of our control. Just general market shifts, what's happening in the economy, all of these things can play such a huge role in the growth of your business, depending on what sector and things you work in, that it would be unrealistic to think that they would never have an impact on your business. And those little knockbacks, this kind of a mindset thing of kind of like, okay, that like it's okay that this has happened. It's just we now have to kind of come at it from a slightly different angle, or we have to rethink a little bit and kind of evolve our plans as those
Yes,
little things get in our way.
exactly. We teach, the principles of effectual entrepreneurship, which is a theory uh, that was researched and developed by Dr. Sarah Siravasi out of, I believe it was Boston University, but don't quote me. I'm literally just coming out of COVID. So there are holes in my brain a little bit. But effectively, she did the most comprehensive study as to why successful entrepreneurs are successful. And she followed the
Mm.
exact same framework that social psychologists use to determine what is an expert. And so when she went to do this research, only 250 entrepreneurs in the whole world even qualified. So you had to have started more than one business. You had to have like crashed and burned. You had to have taken it public. Like you had to have basically encountered every single circumstance that a
Mm.
business would ever encounter to be able to qualify as an expert. And she had these
Yeah.
people doing these like 10-page problem sets and speaking out loud about how they would solve these challenges. And it boiled down to these 5 simple things. One, the bird in the hand, which is you always start with what you have. What do
Mm.
you have? What do you have at your disposal right now? Then
Yeah.
affordable loss. What can you afford to lose? Then you have the idea of the patchwork quilt, which is you need to build with others. You need to
Mm.
build with others. You need to galvanize them around like your energy, your spirit, your vision, and bring them along with you. Then you have the lemonade principle, which is basically things are going to happen. You need to make lemonade. And then the final one, which I
Mm.
love the most, is flying the plane, which is you are in the pilot seat and there's going to be turbulence, there's going to be rain, there's going to be all kinds of things. And the whole mission is don't crash. It's not
Mm.
have a perfect flight, it's don't crash. And
Yeah.
so even this concept of like knockbacks, it's like that just, it is what it is. It is
Mm.
what it is. You know, you got to go left now. And it's
Yeah.
being able to, I think, have a very clear vision as to why you're doing it. At least for me, that's what helps because I can be
Yeah.
looking outside of myself all the time. And I do it too, right? We all do. And that can cause me to doubt myself, make irrational, ego driven decisions because I'm
Mm.
losing focus as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. So I would say one
Yeah.
of the first things that, you know, I always go back to is what am I measuring? What am
Mm.
I measuring? What is the metric of success in our business at this moment? What are we
Yeah.
working towards? And that's the only thing I need to focus on.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes that's not revenue. Sometimes it's we've had points in time where we've had to just stop marketing
Mm.
because what we focus on is outcomes. Are
Yeah.
people getting results that they come for, and is that happening every single time?
Yeah.
Yes. Cool. And we've spent, you know, 2021 and 2022 challenging ourselves with that
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
single time. Are we delivering the outcome? And so we
I-
stopped marketing and now we're ramping it up. So sure, there's a growth
yeah.
slump, but there was an intentional growth slump because I wanted to make sure that we were
Yeah.
generating the result. That's the metric that I wanted to measure. Are people growing their businesses like 30% every time they come through a inspiration space program? Yes. All right, cool. Now we can look at marketing. Now we
Yeah.
can look at growing. I don't want to build on rocky foundations, especially in the space that we're working with, where by the time people come to inspiration space, they've invested a lot of time and money trying to solve the problem and
Yeah.
nothing's worked. So there's
Yeah.
this element, you know, for us, it's like you know, we believe that we can deliver you an outsized return on the investment of your time and your money. And you will come out of this and you will not be the same person. Your business will not be
Yeah.
the same. You know, you will be forever changed. And now that
Yeah.
we can say that every single time, we can start marketing again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I love that point. And it's something that we talk about a lot as well, which is really focusing on what that North Star metric is. What are you actually trying to do? And the sweet spot of that is perfectly, if you said it, which is not just what's good for you, aka revenue as a business, but what's value for your customer, and are you actually delivering on it? Because nothing else matters fundamentally if you're not doing that. And actually, I think if you look at some of the, the big overnight success businesses, which were never overnight, they were always like 10 years in the making. It's just that they appeared to be overnight for everyone else. They all really had a hyper focus on like customer and like who their customer was, what value they were creating for them. And they slogged and they slogged and they slogged to deliver that value. It's only now that they're massive and they're scaling through marketing that everybody suddenly notices them. But all that hard work that's gone before that, all that gritty up and down growth, is that exactly that period where most businesses are, which is what are we actually doing for our customers? What value are we delivering it? And how can we deliver that in an outsized way and stay laser focused on that and not get distracted by we only care about the number of signups we're getting this month. Like, what do signups matter if none of them actually are getting anything out of your business?
Right. Like, what is growth? We really have to ask ourselves, what is growth?
Yeah.
I've said, I've said, in other interviews and conversations that I had with people, it would have been easier to blitzscale this thing.
Yeah.
Genuinely. It would have been so much easier to blitzscale it. However, I don't think that we would have the product that we have, and we would not have the results that we have, because I
Yeah.
think there's only so much transformation that can be had when you've got 300 people on a Zoom call doing DIY courses, and that's not what we
Mm.
do.
Yeah.
It's 15 people. It's mostly one-to-one support. Like, we get into the dirt of it with people,
Mm.
and you can't blitzscale that. That's
No.
why people can come into a New Beginnings program and have an idea, in their head, and by the end of the 90 days, have a product and funding.
Yeah.
It's because of the way that we do it. So for us, growth, it looks very different. It's not
Mm.
about, how many bums on seats we can get. That doesn't mean anything if people are not growing their businesses. If there's no progress, we fail. And
Yeah.
for us, as the CEO and the founder, I've said, we only win if our
Mm.
clients win,
Yeah.
right? We only win if they win. And that's a
Yeah.
metric that we measure.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'm keen to sort of dig into this a bit more because it sounds so interesting. But just to quickly make that point again, which is it's that measuring, understanding what it is that you'll want to measure and work towards is one thing, but also really accurately measuring it and having effective ways to measure it is often something that I find, and from my own experience of kind of being this position of startup, finding it really difficult to actually quantify those metrics in a meaningful way to know whether you're actually making progress. So little time is often, I think from my experience, spent on that part, which is really thinking critically about what it is that creates value and how do we effectively measure it so that we know we're making the right progress and we're not just guessing. Because too much of it comes from, I think, just comes from gut instinct and someone saying, yeah, it's fine, we're doing it, so just crack on and let's just like crack on a scale. It's like, but are we there? So I just want to go back to, you talked about kind of this period you've just gone through yourself where you've gone, right, stop marketing, let's kind of go back to look at what value we're creating and are we doing it well enough. What did you do in that process, or like what was your process to evaluate that, and kind of where did you start?
Oh, good question. So that's always been the journey. I think so. The start was having a longer term vision. So in 2021, we reframed. So we ran this pilot during COVID, as this accidentally on purpose, like, oh my God, this works. This is amazing. And so then it was, all right, let's improve that. Let's invest in the product. Let's invest in the business, and let's take it up a notch. All right, cool. And then that was working, but there were still kind of some bugs to get out of it. And then and we had some metrics set, which I would say were maybe more like traditional community metrics. And it was just something about that felt so impossible. It genuinely felt so impossible. And I was in the car. This stuff always happens to me either in the car or the shower. Always.
Yeah.
Always. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute. Let's think about it differently. This is about impact. So instead of saying we want 300 members by, the end of year one or whatever, I want 50,000 people to go through our programs, before the end of the decade.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, that felt less hard.
Right.
Because I just imagined myself there almost like one of those like those ticker tape, what are they called? The little like
Oh yeah,
A
like
little
clicking people
quicker.
in. Yeah.
Yeah. Like 49,999. Like just, I just patiently just keep taking them off. And that felt
Mm,
more achievable than 300 people. I don't know why, but in my head,
mm,
it just felt more achievable. And
yeah.
once I flipped it and thought about that, I was like, all right, well, this is a long play. This is a long play. So if this is a long
Yeah.
play, we got to conserve energy and we need to think strategically about that, because the problem is then going to be, how do you keep your energy for 50,000 people? How do you serve
Yeah.
50,000 people? How do you keep it fresh as you make your way to 50,000 people? And those were much more interesting problems to me
Yeah.
than 300 people. And
Yeah.
to this day, 300 people sounds harder than 50,000. And now,
Mm,
we've combined this idea of 50,000 with what we feel is our duty to ensure that businesses that start, today and tomorrow and the day after that are thinking climate positive.
mm,
So, we've joined the Small 99 campaign to help 1 million micro SMEs go to net zero, because I was like, well, we're already trying to get 50,000 through our program. So put us down for 50,000 of that 1 million. And, it's just add
mm,
it, we'll add it. And again,
yeah.
that fills me with purpose. I'm one of those people, I need to be driven by something more than money.
Mm,
Money is this, it's a sign that the experiment is working. So I focus
mm,
on the numbers 100%. Like, I love the numbers. You'll never hear me saying, I don't like the numbers. I love the
yeah.
numbers. The numbers give me answers. The numbers tell
Yeah.
me what's working and what's not working. But I'm not doing this for the numbers. It's too hard. It would be easier, you know, if I was just driven by money. But I'm
Yeah.
not. It's about that impact. And so having that longer term, that bigger goal that's impact based as opposed to revenue based is something
Yeah.
that I find incredibly helpful.
Yeah. Definitely. I completely agree with that. And what are your sort of, when you're trying to answer or, you know, talk about these as like problems to solve, what are your go-tos? You spend a lot of time talking to your community from a research point of view and kind of doing interviews or kind of just having organic conversations to understand what it is they really need. Is that kind of your go-to to get you kind of ideas and creativity flowing?
Yeah, so I do a lot of social listening. I always have done.
Mm,
For 15 some odd years. I've always used social listening. I think it's because I'm an introverted extrovert, in the sense that I'm an introvert with ADHD. So I'm like, people think I like being out and about, but I don't.
I
Um,
don't. Yeah.
right? I don't have ADHD. And so I've always done that because it's the best way to get
Mm,
insights. And I remember when I first started doing it, it was back in the early days of Mumsnet when I was working in PR, because I was like, well, how are we going to figure out what these people want? And I was like, I don't know, let's go look on Mumsnet.
mm,
And there, people just tell everything. You're like, there's the answers. And so I do that to this
yeah.
day. I do a lot of social listening, a lot of social listening. And then I go
Yeah.
back to the community and I'll ask our members, what about that is hard? Like, how have you experienced this? Where are you now, kind of, with whatever problem it is that you're solving?
Yeah.
And, I really rely on that element of co-creation. There have been times when I've
Yeah.
built in a silo, and, it's counterproductive because you
Mm,
spend the whole time second guessing. You put it out there, it inevitably doesn't work. And then you're like, why didn't it work? It's like, because you built it on
yeah.
in a silo. You
Yeah.
have to look at the data. Blah, blah, blah. Pinterest trends is like something I've recently discovered and I absolutely love it.
Oh.
I do a lot. Yeah, Pinterest trends is good. It
That's a
doesn't
new
work
one.
for
Okay,
all
great.
industries. Yeah, it doesn't work for all industries, but the insights are,
Yeah.
oh, love. I really like Google keywords, Google Trends.
Mm,
Excuse me. Um, and then, other communities, being on
mm,
Twitter, Reddit, all these places where people are always talking about their problems. And then
Yeah.
something else that I've been doing recently is being vulnerable and asking for help. I'm a member of a lot of
Yeah.
communities and be like, right, this is how we think we're going to position this. This is kind of what our team says. Before I put it out there, what do y'all think? And the
Mm,
feedback is great. And some of it is stuff that I hadn't even considered. And I'm like, oh wow, I never
yeah.
realized that, if someone reads program, they assume it's going to be a DIY thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I never realized
Interesting.
that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. So then we can, account for that in our messaging. And, sometimes I'm prone to adding, extra glitter when there's already enough. And again, getting that
Yeah.
feedback, it's like, okay, I've been adding stuff thinking that this is just too simple, but actually simple is better and you're understanding it when
Yeah.
it's simple. And as if we overcomplicate it, you all of a sudden don't understand it anymore. So it's
Yeah.
it's that being vulnerable and then asking people, hey, this is what I think, and like, what do you think? Can you break it down for me?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the thing that helped me the most when I was personally kind of going through one of these phases was asking for help and being vulnerable. I always felt that it was a problem purely on my shoulders and I alone had to figure it out. And that was partly because of that was the way it was kind of being positioned to me within the business, which I believe was wrong. But also, I was just, the minute I started talking to other people, and when I say that, I meant I was speaking to customers, I was speaking to my friends, I was speaking to other people in my networks that were doing the job I was doing, but had more experience that I thought would be able to kind of share some wisdom with me. Like I would talk to anybody that would listen, and it was just so. I sound so obvious, but so enlightening because you suddenly go from, as you were saying before, like operating in this silo where you've got no feedback, you're an echo chamber of your own thoughts and ideas. And the reality is you're probably thinking on a very similar level the entire time. So you're never really breaking out of what you're already doing and trying something totally different because you're still in your same mindset. So that for me was a real kind of break the door open moment of kind of letting different influences in that allowed me to think beyond just optimizing what I was doing and thinking bigger and bolder of new things as well that I could use to kind of break the cycle of slow growth.
Totally. And I think two of the best investments, not I think, I know two of the best investments that we made. One was working with the Scale Up Collective on our foundational marketing strategy.
Mm.
The thinking behind that. I remember when, I first met Lucy and, the kind of the value proposition was I take brands from 0 to 1 million. And I was like, well, we're only trying to get to 100, so you're hired.
Yeah. Yeah, sounds great.
Right? Great.
Should be
You
easy
don't even need to show
then.
up full time, right? Like,
Yeah.
we only want 100. But the thinking behind that was just it was transformational. And I'm glad that we made the choice to invest in high level
Mm.
strategy as opposed to execution at
Yeah.
that time, because
Yeah.
we've been able to use that as, we're still using this. We haven't ticked
Mm.
everything off of this list yet. So let's
Yeah.
just keep going, and times where I felt like we were in a slump, I've gone back to it and been like, well, actually, we're doing what we were supposed to be doing. And
Mm.
this plan has like 4 phases. And I'm only one person. And now I have a team of, there's 7 of us, but I'm
Mm.
still one person. And the last 2 years have not been normal at all. And I know this year for
Yeah.
me, I'm exhausted. So there's something
Yeah.
in like, managing your expectations about what is even achievable. And that strategy has,
Yeah.
it's given me a lot of peace at 3 a.m. knowing that now we're doing what we're supposed to do. And then the other great investment
Yeah.
was in brand positioning. We
Mm.
got a logo. The logo was like the value add, but the real kind of nugget was in the positioning and the thinking that
Yeah.
went behind that. And again, when I've kind of been looking too much outside of, myself, the mission, all of these things, spending
Mm.
time rewriting and rewriting and rewriting, and then all of a sudden be like, dude, you literally paid good money for a strategy. Go back to it and be like, right, this is what
Yeah.
we're actually supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
That again, that brand positioning, especially over the last kind of, I would say, 3 months,
Yeah.
has been like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're
Yeah.
doing. And the brand guidelines that go alongside, it's like, refer to the guidelines. Like,
Yeah.
here's the rules. And
Absolutely.
then everybody's singing from the same page. And so, I think making those high level, making the investments in that high level thinking
Yeah.
early has given us a foundation that we can use as we head into what I'm calling Inspiration Space 2.0.
Mm.
And we prepare, to really ramp it up and scale our sales.
Yeah. Totally. I'm a huge believer in the power of brand positioning. I've seen it be absolutely transformational for so many businesses. And really, I think without it, you're just a product on a shelf. You're no different to and your competitors. It's such an important piece of the puzzle. And when you don't have it or don't have clarity around it, I personally feel it makes execution 10 times harder because you're basically shooting in the dark and you end up being generic and unexciting. Brand positioning helps you move to execution confidently. And I think it's a really good point you make about like investing in that high level strategy is so important. But there is also a huge strategy execution gap that I see quite often, which is great strategy, really struggling to figure out how to execute it. And that takes
Yeah.
time. It just takes time and
That's the
practice.
hardest part. That's
Yeah.
the hardest part. That's honestly the hardest part. I mean, we've struggled
And I
with
think
it.
it is for every business. It's like, sounds great. How do we do it? um,
It's like having a dog, and it's like, okay, I got the puppy. And
yeah,
it's like, okay, week 1. Now we're in week 2. It's like, now what do I do?
yeah,
Like,
exactly. And I think for me, that's where like the big kind of growth experimentation process comes in, which is you've got a strategy and you're going to commit to it. Now you experiment with your execution to try and find the right bits that strike a chord with people, playing with your messaging, playing with the places you show up, playing with how you connect with people, and making sure that that's a real part of everyday life, that you're not constantly over committing to a single execution, but really kind of challenging yourself to try and execute things in multiple different ways so that you can learn very quickly what's working.
and I think the key to that is doing that without running out of money, energy, and
Yeah,
inspiration, because experiments
totally.
cost. And you
Yeah,
find, there's this situation where you cannot invest and not experiment, but, do you grow? I don't know.
mm,
Or you do experiment, but you over experiment, and then it's too difficult to see what's actually working. And
yeah,
then, you're exhausted, and
yeah,
you're jaded, and there's no revenue coming in. And
yeah.
and every business will have this. One
Mm,
of the things that I'm so grateful for are my founder friends who are successful, who are, 8, 9 years ahead of me. And we will have WhatsApp conversations, and they're like, man, I don't know how to make payroll this month. Damn it. Because
mm,
it normalizes something that I think there can be a lot of
right.
shame and fear around,
Yeah.
because that it is what happens. And that's the thing that's going to motivate you and be like, right, are you going to let this thing crash, or are you
Mm,
going to try and fight and trade your way out of it? And,
yeah.
and then that's when all of a sudden you start focusing and like say, and again, going and having that strategy is
Mm,
key. It seems like, right, what have we tried? Brilliant.
yeah.
What's working? Hey, turns out all the stuff in the strategy is what's working. Brilliant. Let's double down on that then.
Yeah.
Let's just
Yeah.
double down
Exactly.
on what we know is working,
Yeah.
and let's try and do it for as little cost as possible, with the
Yeah.
idea of like, right, we're going to get that ROI so that we can bring money back into the business, because that's fuel. And then that will help us to kind of keep growing
Yeah.
and, getting stable again,
Yeah.
so that we can continue on the mission.
Yeah.
because as the business becomes more mature, you get more opportunities. When I think about, where I was when I started and where I am now, I'm like, wow, like I can't even, like,
Mm.
I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person. And that's so cool.
Mm.
So when this is about so much more than just a business. This is like the greatest journey
Yeah.
of personal development you'll ever go on. But you got to
Yeah.
be real. Like you got to look at the stuff that sucks in the eye and be like, right, this literally might fail.
Yeah.
It's like I might be going to get a job on Monday, and I'm totally okay with that because I'm not going to quit. I'm going to fight, but I'm also not going to delude myself into thinking that this is all going to end up, perfect. It might not, and that's
Yeah.
okay too. But
Yeah.
you just keep going, and when you can have that long-term vision, when you know you can ask for help, when you make smart investments in the business, especially like when things are the darkest, right?
Mm.
That is, I do believe that's when it's time to like, nah, we have to invest because what's the alternative? And I sometimes, challenge people, say, okay, well, you've just spent this money on a website and you don't want to invest £100 in a month in support to help you make an ROI. What's your plan?
Mm.
Like, what is the plan then? Oh,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So if I told you, you were going to grow your sales by 30% in 90 days, would you feel like that £100 a month was a bad investment?
Yeah.
Probably not. Because otherwise, what are you going to do? You've now got a website, great. But the website has a purpose. It's a
Mm.
sales tool. How are you bringing in your sales? What does that
Yeah.
look like? And so you have to invest in your business. You have to.
Yeah.
You can't grow on Google. I mean, that is the thing that
Mm.
distinguishes, these large companies from others is they get a whole bunch of money and they invest in the businesses. Now, the unit
Yeah. Yeah.
economics,
So
we're not
true.
going to get into all that, right? But the reality is
Mm.
they're investing in the business. You have to invest in your business.
Yeah.
Otherwise, what are you doing?
Yeah. Absolutely. Um, well, look, we've gone way over because this is just such an amazing topic. So sorry for taking up more of your time than I said I would, but I've just really loved speaking with you about this. It's been super
Oh, I love
interesting,
this.
and
I
you've
love this.
a ton of useful stuff. So thank you so much for coming on with me and sharing that today. We'll do our usual roundup of the conversation in our newsletter later this week as well. So for anyone who missed the live today, they'll be able to catch up. And yeah, hopefully we can have you back on again sometime soon to talk about another topic. So I feel like you've got a wealth
Yeah,
of
let's talk
knowledge that
about
you can share with us.
sustainability next, because that's my
Yeah.
thing, and that's the one thing I can say is, having gone through a period of just feeling really disillusioned and exhausted,
Mm.
this the climate crisis has totally re-inspired me and reconnected
Yeah.
me to the grander mission of inspiration space, which is helping
Yeah.
people to use entrepreneurship as a vehicle to change the world. And
Yeah.
if you're not thinking about sustainability, if you're not thinking about your carbon emissions, if you're not thinking about the role that your business plays for good and for bad in changing behavior, now is the time
Mm.
to start. And that is something at
Yeah.
Inspiration Space that we are really doubling down on. So I would love to come back and talk about that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Sounds great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Liana. And we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.